Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's another walk and talk video because I haven't posted anything in a few days and a lot's been going on that we should talk about. So where do we begin? Well, let's begin with the obvious. The Calgary Flames, as I'm recording this before Tuesday's game against Montreal, the Calgary Flames are 1-6-0. Points wise, they were off to the worst record in franchise history to this point. They had another season where they didn't get any wins, but they had 3 ties. So wins wise, they're not worst ever. Points wise, they are. Either way, whichever way you cut it, if you're nitpicking about how not bad you are, you're not off to a good start. So what's happened? Well, quite a few things. The Flames play a style of hockey which is, the margins are narrow. They, for better or for worse, probably for worse right now, they don't have elite offensive talent the way they did in the olden days when they had, say, Johnny Gaudreau, Matthew Tkachuk, or even Theo Fleury, Joe Newdike, whatever. Like, in terms of the level of elite offensive talent, it's just not there the way they need it to be to contend. And I think they know that. And because of that, they play a really stifling, structured, agonizingly detailed defensive style. Their checking game is the thing that they will live or die on. And right now, the details of their checking game aren't there, and so they're not living on it, they're dying on it. And so you can look at, a lot of the stuff that sort of stemmed from that. If you look at, say, Dustin Wolf's goaltending numbers, they're not good, but I would also argue that a decent amount of that is because of, well, they've been pretty bad defensively. And so the other team gets so many grade A scoring chances that it's hard to really argue that it's up to the goaltender because, well, what's he supposed to do? So there's that. They play that stifling defensive style. They haven't gotten the breaks offensively, and so it's been that kind of season through 7 games where they're finding ways to lose. They're not getting the bounces, they're not bearing their chances, and on the opposite side, pretty much every bounce or chance against them goes in. And I imagine for a team that really committed to playing that stifling style last year and had a lot of success doing it, they, statistically speaking, if you look at how few goals they scored, they shouldn't have been anywhere near the playoffs, but they were. And so I think you gotta judge a team on their successes, and they were able to do that style successfully for a year. But when it's not going for you, man, I can't imagine playing, the mental wear and tear playing that kind of style game has on you, because you can't make mistakes, because you don't have a margin for error. You can't outscore your mistakes, and so you think you can't make mistakes. And if it's not going well for you, then I can easily see you getting into your own head a bit. So it's one of those things where it's been a tough month of October. And the irony is, probably the worst game they played in October, the game in Edmonton, was the one they won. And they've been playing pretty decent hockey last 6 games. I mean, they've had some incomplete games. The game against, they're all blurring together now, but the last home game they played was pretty good against Winnipeg. And they ended up just making just enough mistakes, taking too many penalties, and found a way to lose. But you see that St. Louis home game, that was like that. The Vegas home game, that was like that. Playing pretty well, but finding ways to lose. So that's where we're at now. The Flames 1-6-0. Maybe they deserve a better fate. Maybe they don't. I mean, you get the breaks you deserve, and they haven't thoroughly outplayed their opponents yet and lost. So I don't know. The record is what the record is. I'm a proponent of, you are what your record says you are, and the Flames so far have been a group that has found ways to lose. So where do we go from here? The short answer is they got 75 games left. There's a lot of things that could happen. Could they make the playoffs? it's a possibility, but I think, you know, the further and further you get into the season with them sort of fighting it a bit, the less of a likelihood that is. And so do I think that Craig Conroy is going to abandon his plan and, you know, package first-round picks to try to get a pick to save the team, or a player to save the team? No, that he has a plan. And I know sometimes midway through a plan, it doesn't seem like there's much of a plan going on. But if you look at sort of at the abstract, you know, 23-24, his first year at the helm, he had to do a tear down. And I don't think he wanted to do a tear down, but when you talk to the players about contracts and, you know, you're far apart and your group hasn't had a ton of success with those older players, and you have a choice between doubling down on a group that wasn't really working or getting younger, the choice is pretty clear there. So they decided to get younger. And then after spending basically 15 or 16 months just dismantling a hockey team, a team that was actually in the playoff race before they started selling pieces off, you know, they spent 24-25 not dismantling it, because I think, you know, you knew the old group, you knew what they couldn't do. You knew that, you know, it was difficult to make the playoffs with them, and it was tough to have sustained success with that group. And so once you move all those pieces out, you kind of have a new group, and you want to go, okay, what can this car do? And so I think 24-25, partially because I think on the human side of things, they wanted to make sure the group, you know, didn't have to undergo so much upheaval again, but also because just the idea of, okay, let's see what the capabilities of this team are. So they stuck with it, and they kind of have an idea of what some of the young players can do. You know, you find out Matt Coronado is a pretty big piece of the team going forward. You realize that Dustin Wolf is the player you want him to be. You realize you have Kevin Ball, who's a good piece. So they learned a lot of stuff last year, and I think there's a case to be made for let's not change much going into this year. And then you start the season, and for whatever reasons, just it's not going your way. And so I don't think Craig is going to abandon the plan, because I think the plan is pretty smart as far as plans go, but I think you might accelerate a few things if things continue to slide. The less and less likely a playoff spot seems, the more likely they are, I think, to accelerate some departures of older players, or at least to entertain more seriously potentially moving guys. I don't think they're going to push people out the door. To steal a phrase that Craig Conroy uses a lot, he's not going to make trades just to make trades. They're going to do things to try to improve the team. But I think, you know, I don't think they're going to make any moves this year to get them over the finish line, much like they didn't do last year. I think they weren't in a mindset of, oh man, got to move all these picks and prospects to build for right now. No, right now is not the time you want to build for. You've got to have more of a future-focused look. And on a future-focused look, I think if you have opportunities to create chances for players who deserve it, either to move up from the Wranglers or to potentially open a spot for a future player in a year or so, or to find a young player in your age group that could actually help you, or to potentially add some picks. You know, there's a lot of different things you can do. But I think whatever they do, they're going to do it with a future focus. And so I don't think they were going to make any moves this year to load up this group this year to make a playoff run, because it's just not the time frame for that. And the further and further the playoffs seem, I think you might see some movement become more of a reality. But, you know, like I said, the get-go, there's 75 games left, and I know, you know, when you're in the middle of a losing streak, whether you're covering it, whether you're watching as a fan, whether you're on a team that's losing, it feels like you're stuck in a forest and there's no way out, and you're dead. You're gone forever. And the older you get, I'm cranky and old at this age, you know that's not the case. You know, your rational brain says, yeah, all losing streaks end. All teams bounce back from these kind of things, and they're probably due for a winning streak at some point. So I think, you know, they're going to take a long view of this, but this is the kind of thing where I think as much as it must pain the players to think about this, you know, and I don't think they are, but I think management types are, I think this type of situation does create some opportunities to accelerate some things that they were looking at doing in the future. Maybe the time frame on moving some veterans moves up a bit, but, you know, we'll see. Far as I know, after I post this, they might go on a bajillion game-winning streak, and this will all be for naught, and I'll just look very foolish. But, you know, I think, you know, when you're managing a hockey club, you don't take a short-term view of things. You have to take a long-term view of things, especially, if you're in a contender, you can take a short-term view and burn the boats and, picks be damned, you want to have a championship. That's Florida and Edmonton, and, those are the moves they should be making. But for where the Flames are, I think the long-term view is the smart view. And for where the Flames are, I think that they're in a position right now to, as painful as it sounds, to potentially take advantage of a rough spot of play to leverage some things and to make some improvements. But we'll see how they go. Thanks for tuning into the video, everybody. If you like this video, please click the like button. If you really like this video, please click the subscribe button. And if there's any other videos you want to see on the channel, whether or not it's me in a field on a baseball diamond yakking about stuff, or it's other things going on, throw some suggestions or anything down in the comments. And once again, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.